Welcome back to the show. We're excited to be here with you today. Today we are joined with a special guest. He is an international best-selling author. He is the host of Keep the Republic, the television show on Brighteon TV. He's also the host of Keep the Republic on BrighteonRadio.com. And if you're here local in the Treasure Valley, you can find him also on 94.1 The Voice with Keep the Republic. Our guest today is Dr. Daniel Bobinski. Daniel, how are you?
I am well, thank you very much.
How was that intro?
A plus.
A plus. All right. You know what? I'll take that. Even if you would have said C, I would have been like, it's a passing grade.
Okay.
You know, out of all those things, the one thing I also forgot to mention is True Idaho News.
Yeah.
So you have True Idaho News podcast, which I co-host with you on many occasions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I love it. It's a blast. You know what? It's not often you get to co-host with a doctor on a show.
Ooh, yeah.
So I'll take that.
You're right. I'll have to try it sometime.
Well, you do actually talk a lot of times. You've had Alan Keyes on your show, correct?
Yes.
And he's a doctor as well, right?
Dr. Alan Keyes, Dr. Duke Pesta, Dr. Ryan Cole. I've had multiple doctors, I guess, as guests on my show, but not as co-hosts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Although that's going to change. That's actually, I can't disclose too many details, but there's a cool project people want to be aware of that we're going to be launching in the next couple of months that will feature Dr. Alan Keyes and me doing a weekly show.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You've given me some of the details, and I have kept my lips sealed, and I will still do so.
Anything.
But I got to tell you, I'm actually really excited for what he has planned. It's a big thing, and that's as far as I'll go.
Thank you.
But Idaho will be excited. People across the nation, I believe, will be excited as well.
Yeah, it's going to be big.
Yeah. So we wanted to bring you on. I mean, my goodness, there's so much going on around the state of Idaho and across the country. I'm sure you recently saw Biden's speech.
Oh, the P resident. Yeah, he did a speech.
He did. He did. All right, here's the big debate. Did it have the background feeling of communism, Nazi Germany, or Satan just kind of caping over him?
Wow. Can I say yes to all three? We have an all of the above option.
Yeah, it's insane. You know, what's interesting, too, is I've been looking on Twitter, and we talked about it on our last episode. We had Representative Tammy Nichols on with Kirsten and I, and we talked about the speech, and we played a clip of it, and it really feels like what he's doing is declaring war on half of America, a civil war, if you will.
I don't think it's just Joe Biden doing that, though.
No.
I had posted about some of this stuff on social media, and I loved one of the comments that he ordered, the invasion of Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence when somebody commented he couldn't order a pizza. The guy is, I'm thinking he'd have a tough time deciding vanilla ice cream or butterscotch. The guy is not there. He's just not. So you got the people behind the scenes that are making these things happen.
Yeah.
And I would equate them with what you and I might call deep state.
Yes.
Right? However you want to phrase it, it's the people who are trying to institute a top-down authoritarian government in our country to take America down. This is not a new thing. This hasn't just been happening since COVID. This has been going, I first locked onto this when I was 18 years old, and I'm 61 now, and I've been tracking this for all these years. That it's been a long, slow process of demolishing America, a systematic demolition, deconstruction, I think may be a better word, of our constitutional republic, to try to get people weaned into the idea that we need these top-down solutions. And they now call it the Great Reset. It used to be called the New World Order, but it is really now the Great Reset. And do you remember a couple of years ago when people started talking about this on social media, they were saying, that's false, that's misinformation. And I'm going, how can this be misinformation? When you go to the World Economic Forum website, WEF.org, and they have an hour-and-a-half video talking about the Great Reset and what they're going to do. They were out there already discussing it. So you had social media trying to say it's misinformation. Right there, that should be obvious to anybody with more than two brain cells that this is an attempt to shut everybody up about what's really going on.
Yeah, I agree with you. And going back to what you said about it not being necessarily Joe Biden, I think you're actually correct with that, because immediately after that speech, he was asked the next day if he viewed MAGA, as they said, MAGA Republicans as a threat. He's like, what? No, I don't view them as a threat. And then later that day, he went on Twitter, or his team did, I would say, and said that essentially equated us all to terrorists. Every Christian conservative, and that's what people need to understand. This isn't about Trump. This was never about Trump. Trump was just the first person that they could really attack because he pushed back hard.
He's the lightning rod.
Yes. This has really always been about going after Christian conservatives, people who believe in, normal old school values, people who believe in the Bible and put the love of life and liberty above their own personal interests. Because oftentimes your personal interests will align with those two things. So, it does concern me. I actually saw also that there was an article that a lot of wealthy liberals are now buying passports and houses outside of the United States in preparation for a civil war. Now, the funny thing about the whole Civil War conversation is everybody's like, we're not going to have a civil war or anything like that, because they think, we just say, okay, go. Like, that's not how it's ever worked in any other country. It hasn't been like, hey, we're declaring war on you and we got to get all our people together, but, give us a week, we'll be there. Right. And I don't even know that it's going to be a traditional civil war. We could see it where it's like Nazi Germany, where they start villainizing people, right? They were dealing with a famine. And I had mentioned this earlier, and I won't go too much into it, but they were dealing with a famine. They were dealing with hunger. And what do we have now? We have it where one of the biggest wheat exporters is Ukraine. They're at war. We have a lot of food shortages. We have it to where farmers and ranchers in Europe are now
they're shutting down all food production like that in the Netherlands.
Yes, exactly.
Huge exporter.
So they are creating essentially what happened back then.
And you just nailed it. They're creating.
Yes.
This is not just happenstance. This is planned.
Yeah, 100%. And what did they do? Adolf Hitler used that opportunity, because when we're hungry, when we're tired, when life is going bad, we look for a reason. We want to eliminate that reason. And Hitler said it's these cripples, it's the Jews, it's these gypsies. They're the reason. We need to round them up. And it wasn't even like, hey, we're going to go ahead and kill these people. He never approached the citizens and said that. We're going to round them up. We're going to get them out of our country. We're going to get them to where they're not negatively impacting our country. And then we saw what he did. And I am concerned that that's also a possible trajectory that the left is trying to go with this, with their amplified speaking points, their talking points that they're doing. I think we're seeing where they could set it up to blame us. They have all these reasons now that people are going to be looking and saying, who's the problem? Oh, it's these Christian conservatives. They're the problem. Yeah, we should totally get them out. Yeah, let's get them over to this place where they can be on their own and be free and not affect our economy. But really, what's going to happen? So those are two possible scenarios I see that the left is at least pushing for. But the important thing to remember also is that what they don't have, these Satanist liberals, they don't have God on their side. Right. And that's what we do have.
Yes.
So they are in a losing battle. But, I mean, we see even now, like I said, the left, a lot of these wealthy liberals, which the left has become the wealthy class. Yeah. It's funny. They used to say the Republicans were the wealthy class. Really, we were always, hardworking people. There were wealthy people, but there were also everyday conservative Christians that were involved in the party. The liberals are now white and wealthy, and we are representing the working class. And a lot of these Democrats that are switching over after seeing that speech, and also from seeing President Trump and what he did, these were people who they were registered Democrats because their grandparents were. And why were their grandparents? Because of the unions.
Yep, that's my grandpa.
So that's the only reason a lot of these people are Democrats. And those people are going to wake up because they have traditional values.
They're waking up in large numbers.
Yes. And we're also becoming the party. We've always been the party that represents everybody, right? We never got involved with the whole Ku Klux Klan like the Democrats did.
Right.
We didn't allow that to lead our party and have that hatred and racism. We've always been we want to protect the country and everybody in it. And that includes people of all colors, all religions, all races. all that. But we need to know who's coming in, and we need to regulate that. And now we see it where Trump has won by larger and larger margins the 2 times he ran. We're getting the Latino vote. Mm-hmm. We're getting the African-American vote. Mm-hmm. People are waking up and saying, wait a second. We believe in conservative ideology. And we're seeing that this monster that the GOP has been made out to be isn't actually the case.
Yeah. Have you seen the hashtag walk away movement that started, years ago?
Years ago, yeah.
Like 4 years ago. It's so great watching them, like when they come and we're just like open arms and we are not what they villainize us to be, but
well, we're a culture that loves to villainize. Even when I was out in my car before you got here, I looked at a message. We just had the Liberty Dogs on, which was funny of itself because I brought them on because a Liz Cheney Republican, a liberal Republican, tries to tie people to these groups, and this was the second attempt to tie me to something without any reason to do so.
Right.
So I said, you know what, I'm going to start using this. Hey, thanks for the guest recommendation. Let me know who the next one should be.
Right.
Liberty Dogs are great people.
Yeah. Yeah.
True Americans.
Yeah, they are.
And they believe in the Constitution and they support it. And as you're saying, you have the Liz Cheney Republicans. I prefer now to use the phrase left-wing Republicans. Call them for what they are. Yeah. Because there are people, we are the party of the Big Tent, really, the Republican Party is. It's amazing to me how many people look at a Republican and they think if you're a Republican, then you're a conservative, just because you've got an R after your name. Take a look at our current governor in this state.
Yeah.
This dude is not a conservative.
Right.
Take a look at the guy who's going to become our next lieutenant governor. Campaigned as a conservative, has a much lower conservative rating from the Idaho Freedom Foundation and other places out there, the American Conservative Union, than his opponent, Priscilla Giddings. She had a very conservative record. His campaign literature actually called her a liberal, and he called himself a conservative.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to cross that all out and just say, liar.
Yeah.
You know, and I have to say, when I first started writing on politics 3 years ago, after having been trying, I fought for decades to not get involved and keep an arm's length, but I just got sucked into it. I had to speak truth. And I was warned, don't use the word liar. You're a journalist. You know what? No, I'm calling them out.
Yeah.
If somebody says something that's not true on purpose to mislead people, that's not just misspeaking. I'm going to say it for what it is. It is a lie.
Yeah.
And we have a guy right now who's going to become our next lieutenant governor who lied. And if he wants to sue me, then he's going to make his choice to do that. I'm not going to invite it. But if he wants to choose it, I'm going to say, fine. Let's go ahead and do discovery. Let's look at the records. Let's find out what it is, because that is a purposeful statement to smear someone who's a true conservative and has the voting record to prove it. American Conservative Union, Idaho Freedom Foundation, all those organizations that grade people's voting records. He does not have anywhere near a conservative record compared to Priscilla Giddings. To call her a liberal, that's a lie.
Yeah.
And yet he purposefully deceived. What really bothers me, and this would be a topic for maybe someone that has an answer that I don't have, why did he say, I don't need to campaign? She was out there. Her fundraising was so much farther than his from the people. Her money was coming from the people.
Yes.
Yep.
His money was coming from IACI people, the companies that form IACI, big corporations, lobbyists. That's where most of his money was. Very few individual donors to Scott Bedke. Mm-hmm. And so much to Priscilla Giddings from people and so little from corporations. So for him to win by the margin that he did, when you look at the people who voted, the people who donated, that's a little worrisome to me, and I wonder about the election integrity in this state.
That's what makes.
Here's the thing, and this is what a lot of these, and I don't like the term rhino, so I agree with you. I like to call them, liberal Republicans. But what these people do, this is not a new thing. We saw even with Brad Little when he defeated Raul Labrador. There were so many lies that were said. And what they also do is they weave in, little bits of here's a place, right? They're like saying Topeka, Kansas exists. That's true. But then they say, but it's actually, you have to go through Hawaii to get there. You have to drive straight. Like, that's what they do. Well, there's truth that Topeka does exist, but the rest of it is all baloney. Doesn't even make sense. And they did that with multiple mailers. Yeah, they put her next to AOC and Nancy Pelosi on a mailer and said she was a liberal. And they did another one, and why I used the Topeka, Kansas with Hawaii, as ridiculous as that is because they did one dealing with, she wants to defund law enforcement.
Oh, yeah.
No. What she voted no on was when they said, hey, you know what, January 6th happened. We need to bring more Idaho State Police here, and we need to pay for 2 houses.
She wasn't saying that.
No, that's what the establishment wanted.
Right.
So they said, we need to pay for these 2 extra houses. Well, that's a good use of taxpayer money. And we need to bring these state troopers to the Capitol.
And they, just for the record, they wanted those houses for places for these officers to stay when they came from different parts of the state to man the Capitol.
Exactly. The interesting thing about that is what she voted no on was that and riot gear. And the thing about it is that, listen, when it comes to buying or selling a house, this is an important decision, and that's why it's important that you have somebody by your side that you can trust. Somebody who will be honest with you and tell you, hey, even if it doesn't benefit them, they'll say, hey, right now it's not the time to buy, or hey, right now it's not the time to sell. You want somebody who will advocate for you and be in your corner. That's why here at What's Happening Idaho, we recommend one realtor, and that is Dominic Brandon with RE/MAX. Dominic has been a phenomenal supporter of conservative ideology. He's been in the fight, and really, he's dedicated a lot of his time and efforts into helping us.
Absolutely. He was out on the road putting out signs and doing everything from running for PC to, he's definitely in our corner for liberty.
Dominic, again, is just a phenomenal guy. He walks the walk. He is PC, as you said. He open carries a RE/MAX gun when he shows houses, which is great.
Yep.
And he also specializes in bringing people from California to Idaho. He is licensed in both states, and most of his work that he does is referral based.
No, I love Idaho, and I've been selling real estate for 13 years and licensed in a couple states, and got really involved with the conservative movement with a bunch of patriots here, and you guys included, being really important ones in that. But just love the cause, love what you guys are doing, and I'm so grateful I can help you guys get this message out farther to the people of Idaho.
We appreciate it, and we want to support you as well. Dominic, if people want to reach you about buying or selling their home, how can they best contact you?
Best way is to shoot me a text or give me a call at 208-559-5007. And you can hit my personal website also. It's www.idahomove.com. All together, Idaho Move. IdahoMove.com to hit me on the web.
Nobody asked why. Why did she vote that way? Instead, what they said is they painted it that she was anti-law enforcement. And actually, what it was is Idaho State Troopers were reaching out and saying, hey, no. And community leaders were reaching out and saying, please don't take these law enforcement officers off the street.
Right.
And she talked to a lot of people, and they said, this is unnecessary. Do you feel uncomfortable here at the Capitol, or do you feel safe? And her and her peers all felt safe that she talked to. So she's like, this is not something that we should be wasting taxpayer money. Those law enforcement officers should be out in the street. I mean, my goodness, her dad was Idaho County Sheriff. He was 30 years. He was a law enforcement professional.
And she's a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force.
Right. And Scott Bedke's a farmer from Oakley.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
He wears a cowboy hat.
Have you, I don't remember the specifics, but have you seen kind of the racist ties of his old family in Idaho?
No.
Yes, I have seen that, where the black gentleman that moved here, converted to Mormonism, was shot and killed by Scott Bedke's, was it grandfather?
I think so.
Wow.
Either grandfather or a great-grandfather.
It was a Bedke.
It was a Bedke because of an argument over grazing cattle. And so the Bedke person thought that this black immigrant was grazing in the wrong place and shot and killed him.
Yeah.
Nobody, now, if that was okay, that happened. I don't blame Scott Bedke for that, right? So I don't want to conflate that beyond what it needs to be talked about. But my point being, if that was a conservative, if Bedke was truly a conservative, the press would have castigated that. They would have blown that up. Bedke grandfather kills black immigrant, it would have been all over the news.
Oh, they would have painted it as Klansman or Bedke's family, ... past KKK ties,
Question mark.
because
right.
that's what the left does. I mean, my goodness, I go on Twitter and they're like, oh, conservative talking, white supremacist.
Yep.
Like, that's what they would have done if he
Yeah.
was a true...
And I'm not going to blame Scott Bedke for what his grandfather
No.
did.
I
But
wanted
the
to bring
point
that
being
up.
is that the press would have made that a big thing.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because I've always thought that was interesting, and not a lot of people knew about that. I was not conflating it to Scott Bedke, but it was just an interesting thing.
Play it there. Just say, what would have happened if Priscilla Giddings' family
Oh, mercy.
had done that? If her great-grandfather or grandfather had done that,
Yeah,
Bedke would have capitalized on that like nobody's business.
yeah, exactly. So we do have a lot of issues with the media. And you said you got involved 4 years ago with politics?
3 years ago, yeah.
3 years ago. What made you decide? What was kind of your boiling point where you said, I have to say something?
It's a God thing, actually.
God thing.
It's a God thing. It's so funny. The story goes like this because it's true. Like I told you, I was pushing back, trying not to get involved. I was involved in politics early in my life, 30 years ago. I was campaigning for people and actually being very helpful to campaigns and getting good candidates elected. In the state where I used to live, I was in the Navy, and I was helping out. And I just thought, no, I'm not supposed to do this. I got to tell you, I was burned. I was helping somebody in their campaign. They told me they were a conservative. They campaigned as conservatives. And turned out that they had lied about where they lived and they weren't in the right district and they misrepresented themselves. And I really felt used.
Yeah.
Because I was out there putting my name on the line, knocking on doors for candidates. And then they ended up getting recalled. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. This really left a bad taste in my mouth. I don't want to associate my name with people that I thought were conservatives and honest and ended up lying to me and to their constituents. I said, I don't want to do this. Yeah. So I divorced myself from politics for a long time. And I've been an executive coach for 3 decades, going way back to Qualcomm was my first large corporate client back in the early 90s. They didn't even do coaching back then. In fact, coaching was just emerging as a field. And they didn't have anybody there. I was the first coach. We did a pilot program, had great success. And that's how my business took off. It's been word of mouth for 30 years. I don't advertise.
Oh, wow.
Everything's word of mouth. Clients referring clients because I get results, right? So I'm doing that. And there's a large triple letter company that's on the Fortune 50 that had been a client for 10 years. And they opened up their own internal university and said, okay, they called me up one day 3 years ago and said, hey, everything you've been doing for us for the past 10 years, yeah, we're going to do it in-house now. Thanks. Bye.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, that was a large chunk of my income. Bye-bye. Just like that. So I thought, okay, now what? Because now I'm looking for some income. Well, I've always been a political junkie. Been not getting involved, but always reading about politics and what's going on. And I came across an article that intrigued me. And I thought, who wrote this? This is really good stuff. And so I followed it, and I get to this website. And now if you go to that website, it pops up, subscribe.
Oh, yes.
But when I went there, they had just opened the website. And it said, are you a writer? We're looking for writers. And I'm thinking, I'm a hungry writer. I could use a little money. And so I contacted them. It was Tracy Beans with Uncover DC. And I sent an email, got a phone call from Tracy the next day. We talked. She hired me. And next thing I know, I'm writing weekly op-eds for Uncover DC. And that's kind of what started it. Started writing. She was very pleased with my writing. Of course, I've been, like you said at the beginning, an international best-selling author. And God really gifted me with writing. I'm one of those guys who went to English comp. Yeah, it's a mandatory class, English 101 in college, composition. And then so I liked writing. So I took English comp 202. And even in that class, the professor says, who here likes to write? And I'm the only guy that raised his hand. I like writing. And I'm blessed with that God gave me an understanding of syntax and things like that, because I don't take credit for it. I used to write horribly, but I became a student of it, studied it, and I've been told that I write well. So Tracy was very pleased with the writing. She gave me carte blanche at the time. She made me the assistant editor, and she was sending other people's work to me, saying, "Daniel, please clean this up." And that's how I kind of got my start with diving into writing about politics. Now, as far as media goes, that's a different ballgame altogether. Because she asked me one time, she goes, "Do you want to do media?" And I'm thinking, well, isn't writing for Uncover DC media? And she goes, "No, TV and radio." And I'm like, no, I can't do that. I don't want to be on TV and radio. Here we are 3 years later, and I'm on TV and radio, right? But what happened was I wrote an article on masks. When the whole mask thing came out in July of 2020, I thought, okay, well, I've done all my doctoral work here, and I know how to do research in my master's work, and I can dig into material, and I can analyze papers. And so I'm digging into the data. I'm looking at the research. And I'm finding there's nothing out there. Prior to COVID, that's the key. Prior to COVID politicizing mask wearing, there was almost a dozen different studies going back over a dozen years that showed that there's zero statistical difference between wearing a mask and not wearing a mask for viral transfer. Whether you're in a hospital setting or a hospice setting or a home setting, it didn't matter. There's all these different studies all around the world where they tested masks, and no statistical difference. And so I wrote about that. Well, that article went viral. It is to this day still the most read article on Uncover DC. And one day I get a phone call. It says, "Hi, this is Alan Keyes, producer, and Alan's read your article, and he would like to interview you about this article." And I'm like, Alan Keyes. Mr. Alan Keyes, the guy who ran for president, Alan Keyes. And it was like, shouldn't I be interviewing him? He wants to interview me? I should be interviewing him. And I was on his show, and him and I just kind of clicked. Next thing you know, he says, "Hey, you want to come on again?" I'm like, okay. And then he had me on a few weeks later, and then next I'm on a regular guest on his show. And he was at that time doing 4 hours of live TV every day. And one day his producer calls me and says, "Hey, Alan's doing a lot of TV. He'd like to kind of back off a little bit. Would you like to guest host for Alan?
Sure.
1 hour a week?" And I'm like, twist my arm, right?
Yeah.
So I started guest hosting for Alan, doing that. And then they expanded that into what now is Brighteon TV. And the guys who started that up gave me a call and said, "Would you like your own show?" Again, twist my arm, right? So now that's how I got my own show. It's all God. I didn't go knocking on these doors.
Yeah, I love that.
I didn't ask to become, TV guy. I didn't ask to become radio guy. All these things, every one of those, TV, radio, both radio, local and national, they asked me. So I just figured this is God saying, here's a door.
Walk through it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting how these things work. For me with what's happening in Idaho, right? It was a God thing as well. I never wanted to get into hosting a podcast or doing anything like that. I had no desire to ever be in front of the camera. That's why I went to film school, so I could be behind a camera.
Sure.
But for me, what it was is first my friend asked me, he's like, "Hey, we should start a podcast." And I kept saying, "No, I don't want to do that. There's no point." And he's like, "Come on, man." And he just kept harassing me. And finally I said, "Okay, I'll do it. But the thing that annoys me is most people commit to something and then they quit right away." I said, "You have to commit to at least 18 episodes. Well, he got a girlfriend. He didn't have one before, and you know how that whole thing works. So he made it like 13 episodes maybe, so 5 short.
He owes you 5.
He owes me 5. But in that absence, I was like, okay, we interviewed a lot of people, and we were looking through a lens of, his idea was, hey, let's not show our actual political
ideology,
leanings.
Yeah.
Let's try and go neutral with it. And for me, I can't do that. It was soul crushing not being able to speak and tell you how I really feel about things. So, because we were doing interviews with candidates, with elected officials, and we had to stay neutral. And I was like, you know what? Never again. And then Kirsten's like, we need to start a podcast.
I didn't say we. I said someone needs
to start a podcast.
It's like, I didn't think it would be me just because I said someone needs to start a podcast.
And it was one of those things where I was so inspired by Kirsten. You know, I think a lot of people are. She doesn't recognize it, but I was inspired by the work that she had been doing on the ground.
I brag about her. Even on national TV, I brag about you.
He called you one of the top 5 unelected officials who are shakers and movers in Idaho politics.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. Wow.
She's like, I don't know what to do with my hands.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But,
that's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's well deserved. I mean, how many people? So for those who are watching / listening, how many people are looking for candidates to go out? I'm breaking the fourth wall here. Are going to go out and find somebody to fill a precinct committeeman slot by driving around the precincts and looking for American flags flying from a building, going, that person's probably a patriot, and then going up and knocking on the door and saying, hey, we're looking for somebody to run for precinct committeeman. How many people do that?
Well, yes, I was looking for intelligent signs of life, is what I said. Yes, that was all God too. My whole story with politics is God, because I had no intention of doing this, and I do feel like it's 1776, and I probably would have been the girl on the horse riding, 1,600 miles or whatever. She did something crazy. I'm like, that would have been me. I'm like the town crier, like, we have a problem. And I just want people to wake up to the fact that there's a real issue. The wave is crashing, and we can't hold it back. But with just a few of us, we really need an army, even if it's just 300 good warriors.
All Gideon had.
That's what I mean. I want to see how they drink out of the water and let God let a bunch of them go, and it's okay. But we do need a small army. It's critical. It can't just be a
well, you mentioned
tiny
Joe
few.
Biden at the top of the show. You know, what do I make of that? And the day afterwards, I got on social media and I made myself a meme. I got a picture of George Washington in his general uniform, and I said, I owe it to George Washington to push back against the hate that has been spewed upon us.
Yep.
You think about what George Washington and so many people did to fight for independence against tyranny, and King George was definitely a tyrant.
This episode is brought to you by Faith Outdoors. Faith Outdoors is more than a gun store. It is an education hub spot. Whether you are a first-time gun buyer, an experienced shooter, or a long-range shooter, Faith Outdoors can help you find what you need to be as efficient as possible. Their staff is some of the most experienced in the Treasure Valley and is made up of retired law enforcement officers and firefighters. Faith Outdoors also is an official dealer of Benchmade knives. Everything sold in store are items they recommend and use out in the field. So go visit them today, 2200 Cortland Place in Nampa, Idaho.
And you know what I love about Mandy and Nate? Their whole family, they're prayer warriors. So if you need prayer, they are happy to pray for you. Just email them at info@faithoutdoorsid.com.
Small businesses are the lifeblood of our economy. 2 in every 3 jobs are created by a small business. They support our local schools, charities, churches, and more. This is exactly why we love to help small businesses grow. Our custom-tailored solutions allow all facets of your marketing to work in a symbiotic way, helping you increase revenue. From web design to social media marketing, from local search engine optimization to managing your online reviews, our custom solutions are built for you. Visit us today at silohillweb.com.
Egomaniac. There's some debate about that, but take a look at he was maybe not so much an egomaniac as a power maniac. He wanted to institute, this is the system. You will abide by the system. And they're going, yeah, but you're not letting us give a voice to the system. You're saying you do, but you don't. And so there was enough people to say, no, we're going to stand up for ourselves and do what's right, that they broke free. And how many of those people died?
Right.
Horrible deaths to win the freedom that you and I and our grandparents and our parents and our great-grandparents have enjoyed for 246 years. They died for that. So they predicted, our founders predicted schmucks like Joe Biden and the people who are running the show behind him that are going to try to usurp our freedoms and our liberties. Liberty being even more important than the freedoms, because liberty, that creates the freedom. But they were trying to usurp it and institute this top-down authoritarianism. They died for that. We owe it to them to stand up and say, no, you can't push us back. No, you're not going to shut us up. We're not going to be intimidated by your bullying language. We're going to stand for what's constitutionally correct. That is a fantastic document. Bottom-up government of the people. But it requires us, I think, to be educated. Hence this podcast. Hence the radio shows. Hence the TV shows. Hence True Idaho News. Hence Idaho Dispatch. Hence the Pocatello Trubbick Observer. Hence Readout News. All the independent news sites in Idaho trying to educate people on what's really going on. So we have to get the word out.
I know.
We do.
Yep.
And it is a God thing. Like I said, when he left, I was like, okay, I'm done with it. And I would have left it all alone had it not been for Kirsten saying, we need someone to do this. And I said, I actually have one. And it was already a political lane. And me and her got to know each other. We became, well, I mean, I consider her like a big sister at this point, even though I'm bigger.
I'm older by a lot.
But yeah, she could have babysat me.
True story. Yeah.
But
I'm not sure I want to hear this. How? No, don't.
15 years.
15 years.
Between us.
Whoa.
Yeah. But, you know, it's amazing how God puts people in.
Hang on a second. 15?
He's a baby.
That means I could be your dad.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I'm 35.
Oh my gosh, you're a pup.
Isn't that a pup? That's a pup. Yeah. He knows a lot in that brain for 35 years.
Yes,
I'm learning. I feel like this is all a huge learning curve. I did not plan on doing this. I was just a homeschool mom. And then I'm like, we have to do something. I will die on this hill. This is my hill.
It's amazing how God in life prepares you for things. I mean, when I first moved to Idaho, I took a job where I was making like $10 an hour. And God starts putting you into places where you have to learn new things, where you develop and grow and you gain new skills. And all these things happen. And then all of a sudden it's like, how did I end up here? You know, but it is a God thing. And it's really cool to watch him work and put people in people's lives. Even you and I. It's so funny. People come up to me often. They're like, I know you. I'm like, oh yeah, are we friends on Facebook? No, I know you from the podcast. And I have to go, which one? And it's always a coin toss. Half of them say from True Idaho News with Daniel Bobinski. And the other half are like, what's happening in Idaho? And I just find it cool. I'm like, man, who would have ever thought that we'd be in such a position that people would appreciate what we had to say and say, we need this. And it's truly humbling.
It is humbling.
You take a look at the people who founded this country, we call our founders, and the average age was like a 30-something. It was early 30s.
32 something. Yep.
So it wasn't, I mean, you're right in there, dude.
Yeah.
Yes. Good for you. Go.
No.
I'm doing this for the next generation. I'm like, my oldest is 26, which isn't that far off from him. And I'm like, it's for them and their grandkids and their grandkids. I mean, should the Lord tarry, I keep saying, like, I'm expecting you any day. Otherwise, we got to keep fighting this.
Well, part of it is, okay, we got this Christian worldview. All of us do here. All three of us do. And it's a quest for truth.
Yes.
Scripture is pretty clear. Jesus said, I am the truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. So he is truth. And so God is truth. It's not just that God is truthful. It's that he is truth.
Yeah.
It's his very nature. It's his character. It's who he is. It goes way beyond just being truthful.
You know,
you can't lie.
You had to say that. And now it brings up something else that's unrelated, but since we're all Christians talking, I want to ask you. Oftentimes these big pastors get on TV and they talk. And when they're talking to CNN or Fox News, if they get asked, is Jesus the only way to get to heaven? many of them cower. I've only seen one who was on Larry King when they're like, is Jesus the only way to get to heaven? And he's like, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and life. No man comes unto the Father except by me. And everybody else that I've watched was tiptoeing like, well, you know, Joel was like, I just can't say. I just can't say. What do you think that is? What?
Loving him into hell, but that's horrid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worse.
Just
tell the truth.
I echo you. Yeah, loving them into hell.
Yeah.
We had a lot of pastors tickling ears and loving people right to hell. It's bad.
Yeah.
Truth. And that's what we're after.
Yeah.
So Jesus is truth. And you take a look at the founders and their writings. And, you know, you say, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. We're doing a lot of repeating right now. And I always add to that, yes, and those of us who do learn from history are doomed to endure all the pain that occurs from people who don't learn from history.
Yeah.
That's true. Yep.
But Jesus was I call it the Christian consensus. Jesus was such a common thread of conversation at the time of our founding. And look at the writing of John Adams as he's a sitting U.S. president, and he's writing to the Massachusetts militia. And in that letter, he talks about how avarice, the unsatiable quest for money, avarice and greed would go through our Constitution as a whale goes through a net. Our Constitution is not built to constrain that kind of human passion for greed and wealth. We can't do that. He said our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people, wholly unsuitable to the government of any other. Let's break that down, if I may. Religion, the term religion used at the time of this country's founding was a synonym for Christian denomination. You and I, words change. We can go back 20, 30, 40 years and look at how words we used back then aren't used today or mean something different. You know, if somebody says, I'm down with that, now today, I'm thinking, well, you don't like that? Because 40 years ago, I'm down with that means I don't like that. But now it means I'm up with that. So you know, but you take it, so words change. But the word religion at the time of this country's founding was a synonym for Christian denomination. It wasn't are you a Buddhist or a Muslim or a Christian? It was, are you a Presbyterian? Are you a Methodist? Are you a what Christian denomination are you?
Yeah.
That's what the word religion meant. So when Adams writes a moral and religious people, he's talking about people who are, I'll be clear, accountable to a holy God. Because avarice would go through our nation's constitution like a whale goes through a net. And you take a look at the constitutions of all the individual states while we were under the Articles of Confederation. They were, to be holding public office, they all said you had to believe in God to hold public office. Some of them even said you had to believe in Jesus to hold public office. You had to swear to it. You had to attest to the fact, or say some kind of oath. And they said, well, doesn't that violate the religious test clause? Let's go back to the term of religion. It was Christian denomination. There shall be no test of denomination affiliation to hold public office. You look at some of these state constitutions, it says you have to subscribe to this statement. You have to say, I believe in God, I believe in the Trinity, whatever. And then in the very next paragraph of the state constitution, there shall be no religious test. Well, to you and me today, we might look at that as a contradiction, unless you understand the terms used at the time. I shall not test to find out if you're a Congregationalist or a Baptist or a Presbyterian. That kind of test we're not going to have. But you will hold a Christian worldview to hold public office in this state. Some state constitutions, believe it or not, still have those on the books.
Wow.
But you won't see anybody enforcing them.
Yeah.
So this is what our country was set up for, that you had to have that accountability that everybody just kind of knew. If I'm accountable to God, he knows my every thought. He knows my every motive. And I know that I'm going to have to stand before him and give account for every thought and every motive and everything that I do and say. Then when I'm doing and saying, I'm doing then saying with that in mind. And I'm accountable and I'm going to keep on the straight and narrow, right?
Yep.
Today, that's not there.
Yeah. No, yeah. And, you know, You actually were making a really good point as well. I loved listening to that, by the way. It was very insightful. I consider myself an old soul because you were talking about those who don't know history or doomed to repeat it. Look, when I was a teenager, I loved to watch a couple things, and this is why I think I'm an old soul. It could just be these two things. I love to watch National Geographic, and I love to watch the History Channel and things about World War II, the Civil War, things like that. And you don't really have a lot of young people who are interested in that stuff.
They didn't even have that stuff when I was growing up.
When I was homeschooling my oldest daughter, the first thing I said was, you're going to know about World War II.
Good.
And she spent an hour a day learning about World War II.
I have a great curriculum on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's important. I just remember tons of National Geographics in my dad's collection, just hundreds and hundreds. And then when he passed, it's like, anyone want? Okay, no. Okay.
It's so fun.
It's gone. Now we have National Geographic on TV.
Well, I mean, the TV, yeah, I loved to watch. I mean, it was funny. I'd just zone out watching things about meat rats.
Yep.
And giraffes and just different meerkats, yeah. Whatever they're called.
Whatever.
Little guys that pop up.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, well, Daniel, you also have a big event that you're speaking at. Can you tell our listeners about that?
Sure. I am going to be speaking at the Reawaken America Tour in Post Falls, Idaho on September 17th. It'll be in the afternoon. It's a Saturday afternoon. There are speakers all day Friday, all day Saturday. This is an event that is basically name your own price. They have, I think last I talked to Clay Clark, they had about 800 tickets left. That was last week. So I don't know how many tickets are left as we're talking now and as this goes to broadcast, but it's name your own price. So you're talking about Lieutenant General Michael Flynn will be speaking. Mike Lindell will be there. Eric Trump will be there. Stella Emanuel will be there. Lee Merritt will be there. Lee Dundas will be there. I will be there. And we're going to have, about 30 different speakers talking about foundations of America. So the talk you just heard me give will probably be similar to what I give in my presentation up there, although people are still asking me, what are you going to talk about? I'm going, you got to come.
Yep.
Now, for those that can't come, it's at the Post Falls Speedway, which is just outside of CDA. But if you want to watch it on live stream, you can go to brighteon.tv and watch it on live stream. It's also going to be broadcast, streamed on Clay Clark's, Lance Wallnow. I think there's about 30 different platforms that will be live streaming it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So those that can't make the trip can still watch it.
Good. That's great. I
Well,
can't
we'll
make
make-
it.
yeah.
Yeah. You're going to go.
Yeah, so that's actually the beauty of it is I looked at my friend Daniel. I said, hey, Daniel, you think you might could get me in? I love to say that. That's one of my favorite things because my cousin Daniel, he used to say that when I first met him. He was like, hey, he's from Alabama. He's, hey, you think I might could? What? So now I just love to say it.
Yep.
You think I might could? But no, I looked at Daniel. I said, Daniel,
Hook me up.
can you help out what's
Nice.
happening in Idaho?
Help a brother.
And without
yeah.
hesitation.
So as a speaker, I got a media booth so we can do interviews. And we've got a video crew coming up. We're going to be videotaping interviews with General Flynn and Mike Lindell and all these folks. It's going to be cool. Then he says, hey, can I get a media booth too? I said, hang on. Called up people, Clay Clark's team. Hey, can I get my friend a media booth? Absolutely. So you got a media booth.
Yeah.
So What's Happening Idaho will be there too. You guys be doing your own interviews. So you'll be able to probably listen to interviews not only on True Idaho News podcast, but also on Keep the Republic radio and also on What's Happening Idaho.
That's right.
Great.
So Kirsten can't make it, so we actually have one of the two hosts of What's Happening North Idaho joining me.
Okay.
Then we have Lauren from our segment Lauren on the Ground. She'll be there to help out as well as Daniel.
It's great.
You think
I know.
might
I'm
could?
sad. I'm like American Heritage Girls Camping Weekend. And I just came from kindergarten, you guys. I taught kindergarten. It's my first day today. So that's
Exciting.
why I look like the kindergarten teacher that I am. I just had to say, most of the time I don't wear something from...
Like you say, though, you're doing this all for the next generation.
I am. I try to focus really hard on 8 children. I have, 4 left. One's getting married next month. And so I'm like, I got to pour into them and still protect the Republic.
Yeah. Daniel, where can people find you if they want to subscribe to your shows and just really see everything you're doing?
Sure. So we have True Idaho News, and I'm probably not as active on that as I wanted to be. You talked earlier about, being neutral in your news and just reporting news as is. It's very difficult for me to do. I can do it. It's almost like I can read this anywhere. So I just say this event happened. So I want to put out more opinion pieces and stuff. So we're looking for writers. If somebody wants to write about issues facing Idaho, contact me, but trueidahonews.com. And people can subscribe there for free, no charge. And we don't inundate you with emails. I mean, I subscribe to the Blaze. I probably get 4 or 5, 6, 7 emails a day from them. It's overwhelming. So, I mean, I still do it because I want to follow what they're putting out, but it's a little overwhelming. So we put out 1 email a week with all the links to the news that we published that week. I am moving to doing more video news. I'm going to be doing short little 60, 90-second news segments.
Yeah, that's great.
So we're moving into that. People can also see my show live on Brighteon.tv every Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, 1 p.m. Pacific for those Idahoans that live up north. That's a live show. Occasionally, I pre-record. I think I've only done that once so far over the past. My show's been in existence now for over a year. I've recorded once, and that was for Thanksgiving. Just so happens that this next week, September 15th, my show will be pre-recorded because I'll be driving up to Post Falls to speak at the Reawaken America Tour. So we're going to do a pre-record for that. But that's almost always a live show. Then you can go to brighteonradio.com, listen live on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. Mountain, 8 a.m. Pacific. If you're in the Valley here in Boise, Treasure Valley area, 941 FM, 94.1 on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m., so you got to be up early.
I know.
Now, I will tell you this, that we're working on a new website, which will probably be up next weekend, keeptherepublic.us.
Oh, cool.
keeptherepublic.us, and we're going to make that an aggregate site. So if you don't want to go to all the other places to find my stuff, you can see, you won't be able to watch it live, but you can see the replay of my TV show and my radio shows. Those will all be linked from that website.
Good.
Very cool.
Smart.
Daniel, I am excited. I appreciate, one thing I do want to say too is, this just kind of speaks to your character, and I want to point it out. A lot of times, you have a podcast, I have a podcast, I co-host with you, but a lot of times when an opportunity comes up for other podcasts or whatever to have interviews, most people will not go out of their way to help those people. They'd want exclusivity. You did help us out, and at What's Happening Idaho, I just want to say we really appreciate you. I appreciate you as a friend and everything that you're doing here in the state of Idaho. And so on that note, everybody, I want to thank you for tuning in. Dr. Bobinski, thank you for joining us.
Thanks
Keep
for
up
having
the
me.
good fight.
It's been a pleasure.
It's kind of cool to be the guest.
Right.
You're really good at it.
Thanks. Normally I'm the host asking the questions,
Yeah.
so this is kind of cool.
Yeah. We'll have you on again for sure.
Okay.
Good.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you again next time.
You've been listening to What's Happening Idaho. Idaho's conservative voice. If it's happening on the right, we're talking about it. And if it's happening on the left, we're laughing about it. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. You can hear the show on every major podcast site and find out more about us at the website at www.idahospodcast.com. See you next time on What's Happening Idaho.